Hey, this is Dave Almy of ADC Partners, and I think it's fair to say that the sports business world is built on big transactions. Things like franchise sales, private equity investments, media rights deals, naming rights partnerships. I mean, all these things and more fuel the ever-growing sports economy. And in this new feature of the Sports Business Conversations podcast, we're going to take a close look at how some of these transactions came to be. It's called The Room Where It Happened. And in it, we'll deconstruct a recent sports transaction with the person who helped put all the pieces together. This time, Eryn McMahan of Longhorn Sports Properties in Learfield is taking us into the room where it happened, where she'll pull back the curtain on the partnership she crafted with Human to put their brand on every single one of the Longhorns' playing surfaces. So make sure your earbuds are in nice and snug, because you're about to get access to the room where it happened.
Hey, this is Eryn McMahan, Senior Manager of Business Development with Longhorn Sports Properties in Learfield, and I'm taking you into the room where it happened on the Sports Business Conversations podcast from ADC Partners.
So, Eryn, I think we got to start by dispelling a rumor, or what potential rumor. Is it true that you actually do bleed burnt orange?
It is true that I bleed burnt orange, and that comes very naturally from the time that both of my parents, my grandparents, everybody basically graduated from Texas.
Oh my God, I didn't realize this was such a family affair.
Oh yeah, it started early. I was lucky enough to be recruited and play women's basketball at the University of Texas. I do have to use the word play a little bit more lightly because I spent a little bit more time on the bench than I did on the court. But if you came to practice, you saw me rocking.
Well, I will also say, I looked it up, and you are on the website for UT Athletics Women's Basketball. You have to dig for the minutes. So
I know. So no one even has to know that. So, I'm just kind of giving it away. But
hey, you played Division I basketball at UT.
It is. So Jody Conrad, a legend, obviously, in her own right, was my basketball coach. And I tell her all the time, the best thing I ever got to do was sit on your bench because I actually learned what it was like to be a team player and try to figure out how I do things for the team more than just being on the court and playing some excellent defense, which I did.
Man, we are already dropping nuggets of information and wisdom here. But we're just barely getting started, right? So you took that experience of learning how to be a team player, and then you graduated, again, this family history of UT, and you traveled all the way to Austin, and working for multimedia. You've been in the multimedia rights business with Texas for over 20 years, right? So that's a decent amount of time. That's a lot of experience you have under your belt. But I think it's safe to say that things have changed a little bit in the last 5 years for your job.
I think that's the craziest part is what's happened. Long term, obviously, I could regale you with thousands of stories, right, on what has changed. When you look at the last 5 to 6 years, I can remember when COVID hit and Cole Gahagan was brought on, and when he sat in front of us in a meeting and he said, we're going to be the leading media and tech company. And when he said that, and then he said a lot of other things too, but the tech piece of that, I remember thinking, what?
You can't even really talk about partnerships in college sports now without technology being part of that equation. And it's just fortunate that the company was pivoting at that time because it sort of prepared everybody for what was sort of prepared, as much as you can prepare for the landscape of change that's going on in the NCAA.
Totally agree. And when you look at just, from the tech side of thing, as ours started, with fan base where we have 120 million people that we have 6 billion points of data. And some of that, we didn't have that right away, but as we started to build that, now you can see how we start actually integrating that for clients. And then you look at the content side and where that has come. Obviously social media existed before 2020 got here, but not in the sense of how we have the opportunity to monetize that and to really build those storytelling platforms for sponsors. And then you bring in the second or the third or the fourth, however you want to look at it, piece of how you bring student athletes into that integration and how we can start to be then really, really thoughtful with those brand stories and telling those in a way of we know we're reaching the right people because we're using the data points to go after, who a specific client wants to use. I mean, all of those things come together. I've thought about this for a while now, and it's given us the ability to move at the speed of sport and culture.
So one of the things that's obviously a hallmark here is it's got much more expensive for college athletic programs to run the programs that they need to do. And so in order to help underwrite some of those, in order to give more flexibility, the NCAA has made a couple more things available that traditionally hadn't been allowed. So one of those is putting branding on the fields of play, right? That's a pretty big move for the NCAA, where the playing field had been pretty sacrosanct for a long time. So how quickly was Texas able to adopt some of those new opportunities? Did the university come to you and say, go get it, make it happen, there's no limits on this stuff? Or was there a bit more hesitancy because it was new?
There's not necessarily hesitancy, might not be the right word for it, but it was more a wait and see until we find the right match. And so Texas didn't have a problem with the opportunities that was being put in front of them because, like you said, yeah, revenue matters, all those things matter. What Texas was really, really specific with us when talking about what this opportunity could mean was like, hey, if we're not telling the right story, if we're not making sure we're thinking about our fans, our players, and all of those things cohesively, we're going to miss the mark. And whoever we put on that field, we're not going to be able to tell the right story. So the big piece to them was making sure we were thinking through every aspect of how we were going to bring someone to the table.
I guess it's such a visible part of the relationship between a company and a university. They weren't going to be capricious by just taking anybody who came to the table with money. They wanted it to be something more than just a logo.
Yeah, it had to be a logo because, yes, a logo is amazing. You have this incredible affinity that can be built when something sits on one of the most recognizable field and courts and college sports. But if we can't tell the why behind that, then it doesn't matter, because what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to take this story and broadcast that story about why, because ultimately when someone's going to put their name on a field, it's probably to sell something.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to show that correlation of why. Because if we can tell why, that's where the magic happens.
You used two words in that comment that struck me. You used the word why several times, right? So being able to define the why and then the story associated with this. It has to have resonance so that when people see it, they understand, to your point, they're just trying to sell something. This is like, oh, this is why that logo is on the field, and here's what it means for Texas and me as a fan. So with that in mind, talk a little bit about Human. Like, what is the company? What do they do? And how did they first get on your radar?
So Human is a cardiovascular supplement company, and their whole goal is to honestly make the world a healthier place by focusing on your cardiovascular system. Now, if permission to get a little bit geeky here, because I got to get a little bit sciencey.
Go.
Okay, I'm going to go nerd on this. So the beauty of what they've done is a lot of supplement companies, or most, there's nothing that says there has to be science behind any of it. And that is what it is. That's what part of it is. But Human began differently, and it was science born and it's science backed. And the research came from the University of Texas systems.
Okay.
So it was actually born
grounded in
campus.
UT.
Yes.
Yeah.
So where it came out of was basically a Nobel Prize winning discovery about nitric oxide being an important signaling agent in the cardiovascular system.
Oh my God! People did not realize that this is a medical talk. This is like a breakdown of the pit.
But this is good. I promise this is worth it. Now, why that matters is our bodies make nitric oxide naturally. But like with anything, as we age, nitric oxide production goes down. But what nitric oxide signals to your body, it tells your vessels to dilate. So if you think about it, and your vessels dilate, you get better blood flow. So that means you get better oxygen flow, you get better nutrient delivery. So now the perfect scenario to a healthy body is a healthy functioning cardiovascular system. So it's those veins working at full. So now you look at the type of supplements. they have supplements for blood pressure. They have, and these are all plant-based, by the way, supplements for cardiovascular. And then they also have it on the performance side for both energy and pre-workout. So back in, I believe it was roughly 2012, our swim team started using their pre-workout product.
Just on their own. Somebody saw it on the market and decided we're going to try this out.
I had nothing to do with obviously any of this. It was just the head coach at the time understood like, hey, we need an edge. We need something else. And he started talking to Dr. Ivy, who was a part of Human, and they started taking this product. And so whether you're a 20-year-old athlete or you're 47 years old like I am, or you're 75 years old like my dad is, we all benefit from the cardiovascular system working at its most optimum speed. Yeah.
But it also goes back to the idea of story and authenticity. Yeah. This was something that was being used by UT teams. Swim team has already adopted it. So there was sort of a tangibility. Now, how did you first come by them and understand who they were?
So my dad is also a pharmacist. Which
oh my God, this is a family business.
University of Texas, like it's all there. It's a beautiful thing. But so my dad had actually been taking the product since about 2013, 2014, one of the products. And so I like to go snow skiing, but I get a little altitude sickness. And so he had recommended I use one of their products to help with that. So, help my blood vessels dilate. So I'm getting more oxygen and blood, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of just a side note. Well, they had come around a couple times asking some questions. They weren't necessarily a company at the time that was out and about and that you just saw everywhere. But back in December of 2024, they had reached out just specifically, like they knew that not just our swim team at that point, pretty much all of our athletes were taking their, pre-workout product. And they were just like, now that, athletes can tell stories, like we should start having some conversations.
Oh, so they recognize the potential value of NIL.
They did.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, it definitely went through iterations of what that was, but that is how that started. So going back to your kind of first question on that, like what has changed? The ability for a sponsor to call in and know that these potential opportunities are out there. It's a really, really cool thing.
So what was your first interaction with their leadership like? I mean, they approached you and they had this idea of NIL. Did you immediately create something around that, or were you already thinking more broadly at that initial juncture?
So at the initial juncture, we were thinking I'll call it like big broadly. We were thinking a little more than just using the student athletes because, what we understood by, listening to what their kind of vision and goals were for it, that, what they were wanting to do, we were going to need some more touch points.
So you're going into dialogue with them and sort of recognizing what you have.
Besides that. So we went through basically 2 initial presentations, where I walked them through different ideas. It was one of their VPs. And after we got through with the rest of that one, he's like, I really like where this is headed. I think we need to bring our CMO and we need to bring our ownership, Joel and Anne Marie, they're a husband and wife team who created the company. We need to bring them into the conversation.
Did they want to bring them into the conversation because the scale had gotten bigger, or were they excited about the opportunity and wanted to think more broadly?
Excited about the opportunity. They weren't necessarily bought into every idea that I had pitched initially, which did not include anything with field. I mean, it included none of that at the beginning. But they were excited about, he could see where it was going. I believe, he could see the potential of where it was going.
Okay. So you had a good creative thought partner in the marketing team there to be able to say, okay, this is what we see, the germ of the idea, then how do we continue to grow that? So how did you arrive at the idea? Because we're talking about not just logos on a playing field. We're talking about branding on all the fields and courts of play at the University of Texas, Austin. So what was it that they told you that made you think, that's a solution here?
When we got to the third meeting, and I was basically...
So this is iteration. You're going back and forth. Third meeting, right?
We're in a third meeting, and I'm having the opportunity now to, pitch to Joel and Anne Marie, who are the owners and the CMO and some other parts of the human team that are in the room. And I basically go through that pitch that I had done, or an iteration of the pitch that I had done those first 2 times. And that they were very kind, and, they were engaged. And at the end of the conversation, they were like, I see potential here. Like, I see something. I can see where we're headed. But, what you've shown here, like, there's no sonic boom. And that was the
Is that
actual
their quote? They said sonic
That was
boom?
their quote. Yeah. Like, and I literally think of that quote probably twice a day. And so I sat with that, and Lucas, our VP, was in the room, and we both just kind of chewed on it for the next 24 hours. And then I went on a run, and halfway through the run, I just stopped. It was super early in the morning. It was ridiculous. And I texted Lucas, and I'm like, are we thinking the sonic boom here could be field logos? Because if we're really looking to make the kind of impact that we talked about in that meeting, like, this is the platform. This is how to tell a story, using assets, at the time, no one else was really using.
No.
And talk about...
And certainly not to the breadth that we're talking about here. I mean,
Exactly.
This is all the courts. But that's
This is all the courts.
sonic boom.
Yeah. And that, all the courts piece to it, that was also, going back to your question about, what was Texas, willing, what did they want to talk about? Well, one of their big non-negotiables was like, look, we're not going to cherry pick our courts and fields. And because that's not good. From their perspective, that's not going to be as useful for the sponsor as the collective backing of all of these different pieces. And so we really need to be looking at this as one huge piece versus trying to do it off. Now,
So that
that's
was
not
it
the right
from the
answer for
outset.
every. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
So
always
that
seen
was
as a collective whole.
It was always going to be a collective pitch and a collective whole.
So you're running at 4:00 in the morning, whatever crazy hour it is that
stupid,
you're running.
but
And then you
yes.
text Lucas, who wakes up out of a deep sleep and is like, oh my God, it's McMahan.
Yeah, because he doesn't
again.
work a lot. It's sad. Sad.
And was there agreement from the both of you? Was it that sort of literal like light bulb moment, or that literal, call it what it is, sonic boom moment where you said,
Yeah.
okay, if we're going to do this, this is the opportunity. Okay. So went back to the office, revised. Did you throw it out to them first, or did you keep it to yourself and say, we're going to sonic boom them with the reveal?
Well, what we did is we went back, and we went back and forth on text a little bit, got to the office, and we were like, okay, we need to see if this, this is real boomy. So like, how big do they want the sonic boom? Like, we would need to make sure we're on the same page that, they'd be willing to make this kind of investment that it would take. And then so we actually we set up a breakfast with their CMO, just to be like, hey, we just want to get the feelers. This might not be it, but, if this is going to be it, if we're feeling, like, take this back, talk to Joel and Emery. And then if this is what we're thinking, we're going to bring Texas into the conversation. And it then became all of these different pieces now moving in the same direction with one.
So pressure tested it a bit with the CMO.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, there's a certain level of like, sure, we'd like to do it, but I don't know if that's going to fit into budgets and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And so we just wanted to make sure, because all of a sudden, these are going to be a lot of different moving parts that we got to get everybody on the same page. And once they said like, okay, so at that point, we basically had I think it was about 3 weeks to really, I think it was. It might have been my 2.5, but regardless, right in that space, to then, get with our corporate team and really dive in and dig down to what this is going to look like and how we're going to use the platform to tell and use that cardiovascular messaging across the board.
Was the negotiation pretty straightforward? Did they have a lot of experience with these kinds of partnerships? Did you have to do a lot of education for them? It was like, okay, this is why this is in here and this is why this is structured this way? Or was it, smooth sail until signing contract?
I would say I guess the word negotiation, it wasn't really about that. It was about making sure that they were on board with understanding, like, here's the story we think makes sense. And how does that, here's our vision for it. How does that resonate for you? So it was more about making sure we are on the same page to, it's it's getting your story straight.
Yeah.
Of knowing like, this is what we want to be able to tell. This is how we want to use the student athletes to do it. This is why this is beneficial for the fans. I mean, the way that we looked at that and the way that we still look at that is having human on the field is something to be proud of because they're actually making the world a better place.
Yeah.
And you can do that in tons of different ways. And they just happen to be doing it where it started at the University of Texas. Our student athletes were actively using it. If it works on our student athletes, what can it do for our fans? And just how getting that on. So they hadn't done a sponsorship, a fully integrated 365 storytelling platform sponsorship like this. But they were very well aware of what it was going to take in those pieces. So really negotiation was more about, let's just make sure we're getting this story right, because this was important to us. It's important to the university. And it's important to human, obviously, because then they want to use that as a springboard to get their products out.
I mean, this has to be one of the more consequential non-naming rights deals in college sports, because there's very few bigger properties than the University of Texas. It's got more sports than just about every university. What do you feel like were the keys to getting this deal done from your perspective? As you look at the guideposts along the way and, all the different possible directions it could have gone, what were the essential keys as you see them to getting the deal across the finish line?
I would say from the get-go, I think one of the old adages and when you're selling is making sure you've got the right people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And from the get-go, we were able to have the decision makers with us in lockstep. And then from the standpoint of the university, having them in lockstep once we identified human as both a viable and not just viable, just honestly the perfect partner for something along those lines. Because when you talk about, how consequential it is to have human on every single playing field, that means you're a part of every single moment in every single year. And celebrations for, there's losses in there too, but it's part of the story and how we lined all those pieces up. I think, we looked at it within the pitch. It was like these pillars and it was, launch was going to be so important and how we got there. And we
telling that story out of the gate the first time.
And having that moment of the why. And again, it's hitting that in stride. And then the content and how we're going to push outside, because inside of our fields, you people that are just come to games, obviously tons of people, but how that resonates outside of the stadium, and then how we use the content, going back to your first questions, start using data, start using our student athletes, all of those pieces. It's like all of those things are what kept it on track, because we just kept the main thing. We looked at what the vision was and like, all right, how do we take the next step? Are we still on track? Are we still tracking against the vision? And honestly, we're still doing that today, a year into it. We just had a meeting this week and we put our vision and goals back up as we were going through and just seeing how everything had been performing. And like, all right, do we need to make any adjustments here? But I think those are the things that I think make the biggest impact in how we were able to stay on track to ultimately get this across the finish line.
So internally, those were the keys to getting it done. But I'm wondering if you have advice for other people who are in your position selling sports properties in this day and age, whether it's college or professional. You only have a couple of bites at the apple when it's a piece of jewel inventory that's as significant as branding on the field. So as they consider, and do you have advice for them going out to market? I wonder what thoughts you'd share with people to help them take that next big step to getting that deal done.
I think one of the things I've learned, and I would think some of my other cohorts across Learfield have seen similar have similar experience, is that these local companies, obviously that have a national reach, but there's something that resonates from a local perspective. It's kind of that I live here, I give here, obviously human born at the University of Texas, that's a lovely story, but maybe that's not the story that's going to be out there for everybody, but maybe it's a company that employs a massive amount of people and how they support the community. But if you can find that storyline, and they're everywhere. It doesn't actually have to be in your exact town, but maybe it's in your state. Those tend to be, and I think, I don't have the exact numbers. I know I've read it somewhere, but most of these deals, or a higher percentage of these deals, do come from a local star with a national impact, of course. So, I mean, that's where I would say really dig into those and find out, what's going on in those companies. What problem are we solving for? Because ultimately, that's what we're doing in marketing, sports marketing, professional, whatever it is. We're solving for a problem. Now, a wise man once told me 99% of the time that problem is sales. And I think that is true. And when he said it, I was like, damn it. Yeah. Yes, I do believe that is correct. Well, but I know there's different ways that people are trying to get there, whether that starts with awareness or, the data, however we're trying to get there. But I would say looking for those local connections, or what are there, and maybe the local's not in the local space, but what connections are out there with companies that make the most sense? Because we're far past the day where somebody's just a graduate of a certain university and they're like, oh yeah, we'll just do the deal there. I mean, I think that's another difference when we look at what has changed, whether it's over the 24 years that I've been doing this or the 5 or the 6 years since COVID, is, we have to deliver and we have to show how we deliver. And it's actually, now that we've got so much data behind it, it's actually, it makes it even more fun. Yeah. Because we can sit back and go like, yeah, there's a reason why we're putting the student athletes inside these marketing, because we know that when a fan recognizes the student athlete and a part of marketing, there's 65% higher chance to actually of purchase intent to actually buy it.
So passion gets you in the door.
Oh, passion will get you in the door.
But the data is helping making sure that it pencils out.
And for the renewals down the road. I mean, all those things are important.
Eryn McMahan, thanks for taking us inside the room where it happened.
Heck yeah, I do. Anytime you call, I'm here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sports Business Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed it, we always appreciate a subscribe, share, comment, or like. And if you're the social type, you can always follow us in all the usual places. Don't forget, past episodes are located at adcpartners.com/podcast. A quick shout out to Scott Holmes for composing our theme music. This podcast is a production of ADC Partners. All rights are reserved.